With Scalise, have you spoken with him?
I've spoken with him, but I'll probably keep our conversations between us.
Congressman, take the speaker to retire.
What was going through your head when the vote gaveled down and it was official McCarthy wasn't speaker?
We got to move to the next step. You know, we are not at the end of this process. Okay, at most we're approaching halftime. We've got to be able to assemble a governing coalition. We have to build from a place of trust. The reason Kevin McCarthy went down today is because nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has made multiple contradictory promises, and when they all came due, he lost votes of people who maybe don't even ideologically agree with me on everything. Take, for example, my colleague from South Carolina, Ms. Mace. She has different views than I do on a variety.
Holy crap! I was not ready for this. Okay, I like. Wow, I'm going to catch up and finish getting ready, but this is intense. Let's listen in.
Yourself, about 7 Republicans compared to about 200 and about, some odd Republicans who actually do trust him. So can you kind of explain that here?
Well, as it turns out, getting 200 Republicans to trust you isn't enough to stay speaker.
Compared to 7 Republicans.
At this point,
have
you spoken to former President Trump about this since the ousting? Was he supportive of what you were doing?
I have spoken to President Trump over the last several days. The ousting only occurred several minutes ago, so we haven't spoken during that.
President Trump, though, put on Truth Social that he didn't think this was a good idea. He didn't want to see Republicans fighting with other Republicans. How do you respond to the former president?
I would say that my conversations with the former president leave me with great confidence that I'm doing the right thing.
Did the former president call you today? Did the former president call you today?
Who are concerned about the future of the conservative agenda in the House GOP?
I would say that the conservative agenda was being paralyzed by Speaker McCarthy. We hadn't even sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden. Our oversight was lackluster. Our spending priorities were misaligned. The top line budget was going to lead to more inflation, more debt, more challenges. So the best way to advance the conservative agenda is to move forward with a new speaker.
What is the end game?
Are you going to require that any future speaker elected allows the motion to vacate to stay at a one-person threshold?
Yes.
Congressman,
considering that Steve Scalise votes in line with Speaker McCarthy most of the time, why should he want the job after this just happened?
That's a question for him, I guess, not me.
He said he's uninterested. He's already said he's
I haven't heard him say that.
No, he's already.
What has he said to you?
Well, here's what I would say. Here's what I say. I think a lot of members are going to reflect on their thinking after this historic moment. I think anything that people have said before the McCarthy ouster is probably bearing less weight than the way people may be thinking about these questions after the McCarthy ouster.
What is the end game?
Comments about Steve Scalise yesterday and today. Will you yourself nominate Steve Scalise for Speaker of the House?
Maybe. I want to hear from him. I mean, I'm not here to make a judgment on where Mr. Scalise stands with his rehabilitation and recovery. I would give him the deference to be able to decide whether or not he'd like to put himself forward as a candidate, but he'd be the type of person that I could see myself supporting. There are many people, though. I could see myself supporting Tom Emmer. I could see myself supporting Mike Johnson of Louisiana. I could see myself supporting Jody Arrington of Texas.
This guy's street cred just went through the roof. This was a brilliant move by Mr. Matt Gaetz here, Florida.
We handle up to the 5 here, some history in the making.
Gaetz. Well, okay.
Kevin McCarthy is out. If you think a little more than 72 hours ago, he seemed like king of the world. He had cobbled together a measure to keep the government from going into a shutdown and got an extension that would go to 45 days, right in time at or around.
Whatever. I want to hear what he's saying.
And the agency said really
of
2
course
reasons.
They wouldn't play it.
Even when you have the overwhelming support of your own party, until a few in that party revolt. Today they revolted. Matt Gaetz led them. And now Kevin McCarthy will fight to get his old job back. Here's the 5.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's talk about this. This is
your local news and you.
Oh, whoopsies. My bad. Hopefully that didn't hurt you. Anyway, so let's talk about this for a moment. This is a big deal. Really, what just happened is now you've got chaos and dissension basically in the House again. We have a budget deficit to deal with. It got kicked down the road by 45 days. So we got 43 days left? 43 days left to figure out how to fund the freaking government. And now there's literally no leader in the House.
Is hereby declared vacant.
Oh my God.
It's over.
That's his buddy right there.
He has been ousted as Speaker. the House taking away his gavel in a vote of 2016 to 210. House is now in recess, so the Democrats and Republicans will meet separately to discuss who they want to have as Speaker. The effort being led by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who's fuming over out-of-control spending and claims McCarthy's broken promises. Lawmakers duking it out all day over what Kevin's fate should be.
Think long and hard before you plunge us into chaos, because that's where we're headed if we vacate the speakership.
Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is somebody who we cannot trust with their word.
We need a speaker who will fight for something, anything, besides just staying or becoming speaker. Under Speaker McCarthy's leadership, our House Republican majority has actually defied all odds and overperformed expectations again and again and again.
This chamber has been run better, more conservatively, and more transparently under Mr. McCarthy than any other speaker that I have served under.
If this House of Representatives has exceeded all expectations, then we definitely need higher expectations.
Former President Trump weighing in on Truth Social saying, quote, "Why is it that Republicans are always fighting among themselves? Why aren't they fighting the radical left Democrats who are destroying our country?" Judge Janine.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing right now, right? I mean, think about this for a moment. We're in chaos right now. We've got, again, like I said, 42, 43 days left until about the middle of November to actually get a budget done. And there's a massive holiday schedule coming up for Congress. So we could have a government shutdown right through winter again, like we did back in the Trump day of our last big government shutdown, 2018 timeframe that lasted about 35 days. That was over Donald Trump's border wall funding. He didn't end up in that negotiation round getting the border wall funding. But now, who's going to be replacement person? We've got a little bit of a disaster now. Let's keep listening in here.
This is something that they have been trying to do for almost 9 months that McCarthy's been Speaker. And the truth is that they've done a lot in Congress. They've got a lot of bills passed. The fact that the Senate doesn't want to take them. They've done a lot in terms of oversight. And, you know, now you've got the Democrats. This is a crazy thing. Democrats who hate the MAGA Republicans are now joining with the MAGA Republicans to oust Speaker McCarthy.
To weigh in.
This is like the devil is in the middle of all of this chaos.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on over. I want to listen to a part of Matt's speech here. Let's listen to this. Let me make sure. I've had a little bit of audio difficulty, so I want to make sure I get this right without blowing up ears here. Give me 1 second here. Make sure levels are good. My level should be good, and we're going to go test this level now.
When it comes to how those raise money, I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and continue this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time. And you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
Wow.
And when it comes to how those raise money,
really intense. I mean, honestly, he's not wrong. I mean, that's the way politics works is, you know, you got a bunch of lobbyists that help you get elected with donations, and then they want to see you work for them. Otherwise, you know, they might have to withhold funding going forward. Like I said, though, the big question now is who's going to take over. Donald Trump is not wrong here in saying, Republicans, we got a bigger problem. We got to figure out the direction for this country. Fighting amongst each other is probably not the right way to figure out a direction for the country. And that's also true for Democrats, right? The infighting doesn't generally help. You got to fight the enemy. If you have a common enemy, it's a lot easier to unite. That's one of the reasons Donald Trump is as successful as he is. He's able to create a common enemy. The Department of Justice, Biden, whatever. Hillary Clinton, right? It doesn't matter. He creates a common enemy, gets people behind that one vision, and then he executes. Whereas what's the common enemy for Republicans? Well, I mean, is it Ukraine? Is it the debt ceiling? Is it Democrats? Is it supporting Donald Trump, or is it not supporting Donald Trump? Is it supporting a different candidate? There's no unity in terms of what needs to be done or what should be done. But well, now that unity will finally be found. Let's listen in a little more.
The Speaker Gutfeld.
Yes.
Where's your gavel? We got to shine something.
Judge,
up
can
for
I
him.
borrow your gavel?
Right.
Yes, you can.
So McCarthy says it's personal. Gates says this guy signed off on reckless spending that he promised he wouldn't do. What does KDP say?
Well, Nancy Mace voted to oust Speaker McCarthy, which I think was surprising to people who were watching. And she says it was because it was about trust and keeping your word. Now, Matt Gaetz is arguing that he was lying, that he didn't do that what he said he was going to do. But it's a 5-seat majority, and Matt Gaetz is sitting in a very safe seat in Florida. And when you have a number of Republicans who are in Biden districts, if you want a majority to win, you have to have a majority, and you have to win by a lot to actually get your full agenda through. And so the Republican Party looks like they're out of commission. Donald Trump is in court, unfairly or not, today. You have this happening, Republicans ousting their own speaker in front of the world.
This supports Trump. I don't think this hurts Trump, actually.
Replace the Speaker of the House, so which means they can't move their agenda forward. I was talking to a friend who works on Capitol Hill on the Senate side who said the stars are finally aligning with McCarthy's office to get a border deal done that is dead in the water now. They can't move forward with that. So there they are. If there ever a time to pull the fire alarm, today may have been it. I can't believe they ousted McCarthy before they ousted Jamal Bowman, but I guess that's where we are.
Okay.
Crazy.
I mean, we don't even really need to hear from you, Jessica, but since you're on the table, go ahead. Rub it in, Jessica. Rub it in.
That is not
Make
my
it quick.
style. No, I'm going to make it really long,
Oh,
actually.
no.
You hear a lot about the impossible job of managing a caucus like this.
She reminds me of Kennedy a little bit.
That is the same number that Nancy Pelosi had, and she managed just fine.
Yep.
Nothing like this ever happened when Nancy Pelosi was in charge. And the judge is correct in that they're squandering an opportunity. Today, Gallup released their economic poll data. Republicans have the largest advantage on who's better to handle the economy since 1991. And this will be the cycle for I don't know how many days, especially if they don't even go back and meet with their caucuses tonight. There are 18 Republican congressmen and congresswomen in districts that Joe Biden won. And those people voted for divided government. They said, we want Joe Biden in the White House, but we want to make sure that we have Republicans in control of Congress. This obviously signals that they made a big mistake. But McCarthy actually has no one to blame but himself. Obviously, Matt Gaetz has his own agenda, et cetera. Kevin McCarthy decided that he should go on Face the Nation this weekend and lie about how that continuing resolution got cut over the weekend. He tried to blame the Democrats. Marge Brennan pushed back and she was like, no, they saved your butt, like they did back in January. And it's being widely reported that if he had not done that, there would have been Democrats that would have shifted over and supported him to keep him in control of this. It was a big, big mistake that he did that, squandering that opportunity to hold on to the speakership.
McCarthy's a little bit more moderate too. So, I mean, if Democrats are going to be stuck with a Republican House Speaker, so to speak, you probably may as well have McCarthy. But that's why you get, 7 Republicans who are like, fine, then we'll kick you out. And remember, it only takes one person to say, I want him out, and then they have to vote on it.
The bank, Jessica. Sorry, there's
Don't
no
act like
unity
you care
on the
about
Republicans.
spending. Republicans spend.
How dare you? How dare you?
No, I mean, Jessica's right. The whole spending debate, that's left the building.
Well, there's only 8 that I guess don't want to spend
what happened
trillions of
during COVID.
dollars.
Nancy Mace is mad because she said that Kevin McCarthy was going to work with her on women's issues and gun control. I don't know how you got hoodwinked into thinking that a Republican majority leader was going to work with you on those kinds of issues. She just wants attention too.
Maybe the 15 rounds getting them in the first place and the previously failed speakership years ago were going to be a hint and a preview of where the way this may go, unfortunately. And here we are, going to spend days, maybe weeks, figuring out who they're going to appoint next.
It's easy. It's Gutfeld.
Yes.
He's going to D.C. right now on the Amtrak.
Don't carjack me.
Don't miss tonight. Matt Gaetz will be on Laura Ingraham at 7. So check that out. Coming up.
Let's see if I can find the McCarthy from that would have been this Sunday. Let's see here. I actually do not see that. That's very, very interesting. They got a bunch of clips here, but none of the McCarthy clips. I would like to have seen that on 60 Minutes. Usually they have that. Let's see what else we can find about this this McCarthy madness. Let's see here. Oh, wait, this.
It's okay. I'm from California. It's good time now. Chad, it passed. So many of you asked the question many times.
This is the budget deal like a week ago, right?
And why you asked the question, but now I just want to let you know that the rule has passed, and let's understand what the rule is. That means we'll be bringing up 4 of the appropriation bills we've been trying to do since July. Finally, we got the members together to be able to make that happen.
No, this was actually a few days before that. Sorry. Nope, never mind. I got to get my dates right. All right, this is very interesting. Let me see quickly here. Bloomberg saying that as interim speaker right now, we have Representative Patrick McHenry. He's the interim speaker. He's the chairman of the Financial Services Committee. You've got McHenry previously saying he's actually not interested in permanently having the job. So he's kind of just filling the job right now. Remember that when we passed the budget here, we did not include new Ukraine aid. And obviously, that's something that Democrats are looking for. Maybe Democrats lost faith here that they were going to be able to work with the Republican-controlled House and getting some. Obviously, Joe Biden has come out to suggest that Democrats and Ukraine absolutely need this aid. Of course, this is where Democrats say, hey, we're basically fighting a proxy war against Russia, not using American lives, but basically Ukrainian lives, and they're fighting for their country. We're just helping them to weaken Russia, right? And Republicans are like, this is going to lead to World War III. And Democrats are like, well, if we don't do it, it's going to be World War III. And it's like, well, I mean, that's kind of the way Congress works. And that's the reason we have debate and discord in the country. Discourse, I think would be the correct word. The founding fathers actually created a lot of this on purpose. You realize, like, why does it seem like in America we have the most incompetent Congress that gets nothing done? Well, it's by design. The founding fathers didn't want our government to be able to do whatever they wanted. They only wanted the government to be able to do stuff when the government needed to do stuff. Notice how when we had the COVID pandemic, we had bipartisan packages to start with. And then when that started going a little too far, you get pushback. That was almost incredibly pre-thought or somehow envisioned or experimented by the founding fathers. Very interesting. Let's keep listening on this.
I'm one of the most bipartisan members in Congress, and at least the solution is out there. But I know that you want to talk about the speaker. Let's see. No one really knows. Whomever tells you, oh, yeah, I know who it is, no one really knows. But I can maybe advance some information later on after we go to conference.
Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So to you, Anderson.
Busy day here, back with the team in New York. Alyssa?
Well, listen, a historic day. You can't understate it. We talked a lot about John Cannon, who was the last speaker that faced a motion to vacate. But actually in 2015, I was working for Mark Meadows when he introduced one against John Boehner. Ultimately, it did not lead to John Boehner's ousting. It wasn't taken up on the floor. He eventually retired. But what I would note about this, John Boehner made the calculation that he didn't care if he was not a darling of the right wing, if he was considered a rhino, if his legacy within right-wing Republican politics was going to be that he's a sellout, if it meant passing bills and keeping his conference in order. Kevin McCarthy made a very different decision. He allowed Republicans to create the weaponization of the Justice Department Subcommittee on Oversight. I mentioned the Tucker Carlson tapes, the concessions he made to the right flank, only for them to knife him, and not even in the back, in the front. I think it was a miscalculation of his own leadership. I would actually...
It's not a bad way to say it, but let's listen to Matt Gaetz here again. I want to hear some commentary from him again when he was outside. Let's listen in.
To whose benefit? People have called you a narcissist. People say that is to your benefit alone. Is it to the benefit of you and to Donald Trump?
It's the benefit of this country that we have a better Speaker of the House than Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy couldn't keep his word. He made an agreement in January regarding the way Washington would work, and he violated that agreement. We are $33 trillion in debt. We are facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. We face a de-dollarization globally that will crush Americans, working class Americans. Kevin McCarthy is a feature of the swamp. He has risen to power by collecting special interest money and redistributing that money in exchange for favors. We are breaking the fever now, and we should elect a speaker who's better.
To whose benefit? People have...
It's really interesting. Again, think that one way also that ironically the dollar stays strong internationally in the community is literally by having a Congress that doesn't get anything done. Because again, it's so hard to keep spending money when you have so much infighting that you actually you do the job of preserving the function of the dollar. Now, don't get me wrong. There's been plenty of spending. We know that during COVID, there's been too much spending. That's why we had inflation. But the entire world did that. That doesn't make it any better. It's still a problem. It's still bad. But when the entire world does it, at least you're still the best of the worst in terms of your currency. I do want to listen to this because I think it's a great clip. I want to see this moment. McCarthy gets gavelled out. You ready? Here we go.
On this vote, the yeas are 216. The nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Wow.
On this vote.
Wow. Yeah. Woof. So you could hear a pin drop in there. It was so quiet. My goodness. That's again, 216 to 210 vote there. Kevin McCarthy gets fired. Fired. All right, let's keep listening here. Some commentary, and I'll add some too.
An indictment of our.
We got to talk also about what this is going to mean for the stock market. Let's just keep it simple. Probably more chaos.
Is basically grinding everything to a halt. And the reason
Intentionally.
Right. And the reason that minority is so empowered is because we have a political system in which the Republican conference is more or less run by people who will never see a real primary challenger. Those districts are only going further to the right. So this problem is not getting any better. It's only going to get worse. And it's the tyranny of a minority within this country stopping anything from happening. There's no judgment.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, like, you have to remember, that's how the system is designed. You can't be mad about that. Like, that is the point, that smaller districts have a voice, and that you have to bring everyone to the middle to have enough consensus. You realize you only need 51%. That's what you need. 51% to get most things done. Okay, some things, in the Senate require 60 votes. We know that. Constitutional amendments take 2/3. Okay, we know that. Some things are a little more aggressive. The point is, to get a lot of your work done, it's not that hard. But then you have to respect the views of the smaller districts. That literally what this person is calling the tyranny of the minority is actually literally what the government was designed for. It's that people who are deemed smaller or have smaller districts don't lose their voice to a coalition of bullies, so to speak, right? The tyranny of the majority. That is what our Constitution designed. If you want to see tyranny of the majority, all you have to do is go to like Canada or Germany, where you have plurality and you have a multi-polar system where basically you get, all right, look, we got 30%, you got 21%, let's form a coalition and we'll steamroll everyone else. The two-party system literally prevents that. Now, it causes like gridlock. But again, do you want more government or not? That was the idea, at least of the founding fathers. So, okay, we'll keep listening here for a moment. We'll flip back to Fox.
Inevitably have to cut a deal with Democrats.
Well, I would also say we should not underestimate the degree to which some of this, as Kevin McCarthy has said, is a personality dispute. Okay, Matt Gaetz does not like Kevin McCarthy. Some of these individuals do not like the guy.
Okay, this person exhausts me. First, it's the tyranny of the minority. Then it's no, it's actually Matt's personality. Are you kidding me? The guy's pissed. He's listening to Americans who are like, stop spending so much damn money. And look, there are Democrats who believe that, and there are Republicans who believe that. Budget's nuts. Anyway.
Warrants on that guy. And the woman with the two kids in the car where the back window
in Philly.
In Philly is being banged out. Forget about the damage to the car. Those two kids will suffer post-traumatic stress from seeing their mother victimized, seeing a gun, and seeing their car destroyed by a dirtbag. They're all dirtbags. They've got to go back to jail.
Well, I know so many people have been victimized by crime in these cities that I need another hand to count them. I mean, it's out of control. And Jessica, there's no deterrence for these criminals at all, not from the police. And it's so interesting that Washington, D.C., San Francisco all have lots of gun control for regular people who just want to be able to go to work. And yet these guys show up, teenagers with guns, and hold them hostage. And sometimes they shoot and kill them. So that's not working out so well. No self-defense for the citizens.
I think that it's making a lot of people.
Okay, well, we want to focus a little bit more on McCarthy here. That was as interesting as that was. Let's try getting back to the McCarthy discussion, trying to get a little bit more of an update as well, just from Wall Street and some institutions on what we might be able to expect for markets here right now, at least in the current market. It looks like 10-year Treasury is pretty stable at about 4.8%. Let's listen in here.
McCarthy's course on the 6th and the way that he was talking about it. This issue, it might be in the past, but it is still actively palpable for so many members on both sides of the aisle. And it really does lend to the lack of trust between both parties here. It's part of why there's such a partisan mood among lawmakers in so many ways, because they don't trust each other. But certainly that applies to Kevin McCarthy. And we watched the outcome of that and all of these other reasons today on the House floor as Democrats, even those who could have had political upside, stood their ground, stood together, said no, and are now watching Republicans have to regroup and figure out where they go next.
Ali, one of the first victims of that version of Kevin McCarthy you just described, and we should underscore exactly what he did to our democracy, right? He's caught on tape with two reporters. They were at the New York Times, describing the 25th Amendment as too slow of a method for ridding the country, the nation, and the White House of Donald Trump, and saying to his leadership members, which included Liz Cheney at the time, that he was going to hope he resigned. Then he is the one who single-handedly resuscitates him politically by going to Mar-a-Lago and, as you said, giving him the thumbs up. There's the image right there. That's when Trump, who might not have been on the ropes with his voters, but definitely was with the elected Republicans in Washington at times, is 100% resuscitated and brought back to life. He proceeds.
Told you, all of this just reiterates. And I know 50% of people are going to be pissed about saying it, but it just reiterates, at least on the Republican side, how powerful Trump is. At this time, also, we've got Nikkei 225 futures, Japan basically down a chunk here, 2.8%. I don't know if that's going to signal some pain in America here for our stock market after this chaos, but the stock market does not like uncertainty, and we just got some more uncertainty. So, yeah, keep that in mind. That's futures open in about 36 minutes. So, anyway, keep listening in.
Place we would eventually end up after all that he gave away in January. You don't go through 15 rounds of balloting unscathed. And certainly for McCarthy, it was highly publicized, the things that he agreed to give up. He empowered and emboldened this far right portion of his conference who wanted to see things, yes, like giving 72 hours to read a bill and not doing massive spending bills through things called suspension. Those are procedural. Those are policy. Everyone has those. But then there's the reality that they were able to then pressure him on everything else because he lowered the threshold of a motion to vacate to one person. We said this earlier in the show. It wouldn't have mattered if the threshold was 1 or 5 today because those members existed. But I do think that it's notable that McCarthy, in these waning hours of his speakership, tried to speak to the institution, almost in some nonpartisan kind of way that this body needed to function. Nevertheless, all of that in spite of the fact that when he did notch bipartisan wins in the past, he came out with partisan talking points. When he talks about he's fine losing a speakership if it means having not shut down the government, I think that if he had had any other kind of speakership, maybe that could have rung true to Democrats and maybe they would have come to his aid. But he has at every turn when Democrats have stepped in to help him, gloated around them, launched impeachment inquiries, and made it easy for them to say, what's the upside to working with you? That's
Right.
where we landed today.
That's something we talked about earlier, too, is that Democrats are like, look, why are we going to support you? right? We got to have some balance here.
Of Gaetz' own making, I definitely think that it's both. Congressman Matt Gaetz was out here on the steps with me. I was talking with him. For him, now that McCarthy is ousted, he's starting to actually float some names. People like Congressman Scalise, Congressman Graves, Congressman Johnson, Congressman Emmer, all key people who are around McCarthy, who Gaetz says that he could support. But all of them, at least at this point, have said they're not going to be challenging McCarthy. So we know that Republicans are going to be huddling tonight, once again behind closed doors, yet another family meeting. You got to imagine this one's going to be pretty intense. There's a lot of frustration that I have heard vented to me in my text messages today from the floor of Republican members, just furious at this small handful of their fellow Republicans who have put them in this position. They would rather be pushing forward on any number of issues, actually showing what voters can do, what Republicans can do with a majority that voters gave them. Instead, it's this. It's the chaos that they began with that they hope to push past after January, but they have never been able to shed.
Did you know, by the way, technically, you do not have to be in Congress to be Speaker of the House. Any American could be Speaker of the House. Kind of interesting. Who should it be? Elon? Zuck?
The analysis has to be made, right, that there are fuming Republicans. But this is not to describe them as torn apart feels slightly off base. This is a caucus that voted to invalidate the results of a presidential election when every single House Republican was on the same ballot as every single ballot they were calling into question. I mean, the lack of integrity, the lack of fealty to the norms of America's democracy, the brutality with which they went after Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, their willingness to eat their own for a betrayal that was really nothing more than saying the insurrection was Donald Trump's fault and let's get to the bottom of how it happened. Makes me feel that describing them as ripped apart is inaccurate. They are sewn together by the lies. They are sewn together by the placement of Donald.
Well, listen to this. You've got this is somebody's like, Kevin, why not choose more unbiased news? I'm bouncing between the news, but there is no such thing as unbiased news. You got Fox, and then you got CNN and NBC, whatever. Like that's a funny joke. I will try to provide the balance. But this is such a great troll. Look at this. You ready for this? You've got Matt quote tweeting Speaker McCarthy on Twitter. McCarthy going, "Bring it on." Elon Musk replying, "This exchange is amazing." And then Matt replying, "Just did." Oh, what a troll. Oh, it's kind of awesome. I mean, like, I think any of us would do that in that situation. It's actually kind of funny. Okay, back to Fox for a moment.
His defense around the Second Amendment, which really puts him at odds with Dad's desire to crack down on guns.
If you willfully sell a gun to someone who's prohibited from possessing it, if you willfully fail to run a background check, if you willfully falsify a record, if you willfully fail to cooperate with the tracing requests or inspections, my message to you is this: we'll find you and we will seek your license to sell guns. We'll make sure you can't sell death and mayhem on our streets.
You know, Katie, critics will say, well, where are the Second?
Oh, they just all rip each other new ones. Oh, it's just so brutal, but it's so entertaining, but it's so dysfunctional. I don't know what to like it or hate it.
McCarthy, newly Speaker Kevin McCarthy, I believe on January 7th of this year, talking about Donald Trump and expressing his appreciation for his help.
I do want to especially thank President Trump. I don't think anybody should doubt his influence.
Yeah.
Where was he? Where was he today?
In court, trying to defend his businesses and his
Not trying to defend his Kevin.
No, I mean
that's the problem with trying to appease a constituency of one, especially when that one can't be helpful when you need them the most.
It is a one-way street with Donald Trump, and this is just exhibit Z of that.
Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington State, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
We'll come back to her in a moment.
Has none of those expectations for his son, despite it being.
Okay, that's back to Hunter. So let's go back to this.
In voting to remove Kevin.
Let's see what the Dems have to say. What do the Dems have to say about this?
Representatives does suffer, does it not?
Well, you know, Jake, we had extensive conversations within the Democratic caucus on this, and I think we really thought through this very carefully. I don't think any one of us actually takes any joy in this. I had this very strange feeling sitting on the House floor. I didn't feel like cheering. I didn't want to clap. I don't think any of us did, because
no, silent.
The reality is that we need a Congress that runs efficiently. But we cannot be responsible for a governing party that cannot govern. And this Republican Party has been unable to govern for a long time, and it really in the 9 months that they've been in office. And it has constantly been chaos and driving us to the brink of despair and shutdown and threats about all kinds of things, not to mention the polarization, the division, the racism, all of the things that this extreme Republican Party stands for. So we don't take any pleasure in this, but let's be clear about something. The Republicans have the majority in the House. It is their job to pick a speaker. They cannot come to us and say, you pick a speaker. That's not our responsibility. If we're picking a speaker, we have our speaker. It's Leader Hakeem Jeffries, soon to be Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, when we take back the majority. But as long as Republicans have the majority, they have the responsibility to pick a speaker. They have the responsibility to govern. And if they can't govern, then turn it over to us, and we Democrats will govern in the same way that we governed for the last 2 years when we had the majority, with a very slim margin under Speaker Emerita, now Speaker then Pelosi. We were able to get a tremendous amount done for the American people.
So
and let's just be clear, it's their responsibility.
100%. The majority party is in charge of picking their own speaker. No disagreement at all. But they're having a problem. They have somewhere between 5 to 8.
All right, this isn't going anywhere. Jump over here.
Women chop their hair off.
Mhm.
It usually signifies.
Okay, it seems like they're mostly over this. There's nothing new right now. So let's wrap this up a little. So Matt Gaetz basically pulled off a pretty rare parliamentary maneuver. It's basically what happened here. And the maneuver is you can go and say, look, with one vote, I want to call a motion to vacate. And that basically means kick out the existing speaker. Motion to vacate the chair. And you need to pass it with a simple majority. Well, that's exactly what happened. All the Democrats are like, you know what, McCarthy, we're kind of done with you. And then you add 7 Republicans, 7 Republicans, 7, who are like, you know what, we'll pick someone else. That was enough to now have no Speaker of the House. So now we're in a place where we have about a 43-day deadline to get this done. In other words, get a new speaker who can actually negotiate a budget deal. Republicans are going to select that speaker, probably. Maybe with the help of Democrats, maybe not. And then we'll figure out, are we going to get somebody who's even more hardline, who says, you know what, we're done. We'll just shut down the government, kind of like Trump did, which is possible, which means more anxiety for the stock market or otherwise. Or do we get somebody who says, oh, let's just work with Democrats and kind of roll over? We don't know. McCarthy was kind of playing both sides, which is probably to some extent the nature of politics. But then again, he's a Republican. He's supposed to be playing his side. I think he overplayed both sides a little too much. So as a result, he got the boot. Now America, once again, is left holding the proverbial bag of uncertainty and more doom and gloom. It's unfortunate. It's the way the game's played. It's the way our founding fathers wanted it. There's no consensus. Nothing happens. Maybe that's a good thing. But for now, it'll create a lot of uncertainty in the stock market. Who knows if that'll lead to higher for longer yields, or if it'll be enough to finally break something, and then the Fed comes in and saves the day. Who knows? Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said today that a resilient economy has promoted or prompted investors to question what it'll take to bring inflation down. But she says that people might not realize that I'm going to just paraphrase here because this is ridiculous. But basically, we don't necessarily need higher for longer, is Janet Yellen's take. She could also be right about that. That's something else to keep in mind. Oh, Janet Yellen could be absolutely right that if inflation goes away, maybe we don't need these high rates, and maybe we can actually lower rates and just have a booming economy again. So we'll see. You look at companies like Nike this morning, and they're not screaming about inflation. In fact, they're screaming about providing more value and cutting prices. But in the meantime, we're going to get to deal with more uncertainty. We're going to deal with more drama. I wouldn't be surprised if when futures open up in 23 minutes, it drives yields up even more. And frankly, it's just going to create more opportunities to go buy real estate during the greatest panic ever. I really think that. I mean, so look at this. Let's just imagine, and we don't know that this is the case, but let's plot it out. Let's say the year is 2026 and inflation is gone and rates are back to normal. Okay? If that's the case, that by, let's say, 2026, everything's back to normal and glorious again, who knows? Maybe there's a recession between then and now. Who knows? I'm just making a scenario. If that's the case, and nobody knows if it is with a crystal ball, but if that's the case, wouldn't a time of peak uncertainty leading up to that probably be a good time to invest? Possibly. And so my thinking is, if I'm a senior or an older person who wants yield, passive income, I would probably be looking at some kind of longer term bond funds, 10, 20-year bond funds. Depends if I needed, the money like distributed, or I just bought discounted treasuries or whatever. That would answer what kind of fund I would want. But I would get some kind of bond fund, because if you believe that rates are going to go down in the longer term, then you'll have capital appreciation investing in bonds, and you'll lock in yield for a longer period of time. And you don't have to sell. So you don't have to worry about sort of the market implication in the event that rates do go higher. If I was a younger person, I'd be like, great. If I think interest rates are going down, this creates more of an opportunity for me to buy interest rate sensitive growth companies that get destroyed in high interest rate environments, like Tesla and Enphase, or, some of the consumer discretionaries and staples. If I thought that inflation was in no way going to come down, then I would probably be in cash and money market funds. I don't know that I would buy gold. Maybe, probably not though. I'd probably just be in cash money markets, and maybe I'd even be short the market. So that's sort of the way that I would lay this out, depending on kind of what you're thinking. When it comes to real estate, I think patience, but also there'll probably be plenty of opportunities, especially if you're a cash buyer, which we are at HouseHack, which you should go learn more about by going to househack.com. We are accepting accredited or non-accredited investors now. There is a chance, and we don't know this with certainty, and read the circular, but there's a chance we may have to close the fundraise sooner rather than later. I'll have more updates on that. It's nothing wrong. It's a good thing, actually. But there's a chance we may have to close it sooner rather than later. So if you have questions, email us at ir@househack.com, and then go to meetkevin.com to make sure you check out those crash courses, the Noob vs. Pro crash courses. Some really great options there. I'll tell you some of them that are pretty popular: how to boost your productivity, how to buy your first house, start a profitable side hustle is pretty useful. A lot of people really interested in that. How to retire early, how to get paid more at your job, how to renovate real estate. These are how to never pay taxes. That's another some pretty popular ones over here. But a lot of these pretty good value. We'll be adding even more to these. $89 as they are on pre-sale. So check those out by going to meetkevin.com, househack.com for the real estate startup. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.